Hi everyone, I'm Debbie, a sports nutritionist, and today we're going to look at the big three macronutrients. You've probably heard of these. We've got carbohydrates, protein and fat, but what do they all do and why do we need them? Let's start off with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are important as a fuel source for our muscles and our brains. So if you're at college all day, you need the carbohydrates to fuel your brain. But if you're doing exercise, moderate to high intensity, so if you're training, there's a sport you're involved in, then it's carbohydrate that will fuel your muscles. But did you also know they're important for our immune system to keep us healthy? They ensure that we sleep well, and they're essential for recovery after you've trained so that you get the most out of the training session and you're ready for your next training session, whenever that may be. The more training that we do, the more carbohydrates we need, and that's moderate to high intensity exercise. I'm thinking about your sports. There are two types of carbs. You may have heard of these: slow release and quick release. So we start with the slow release. You want to be thinking of these for meal times. So things like rice, potato, pasta, oats should form the basis of your meals. But if you need a quick boost, let's say it's half an hour to an hour before a training session, then some quick release carbohydrates could be helpful. Think fruit, bananas, apples, grapes, dried mango, or some of the other things on there. Could be a cereal bar, a hot cross bun, or maybe 2 or 3 Haribos or Jelly Babies. Protein. Protein is a building block, and it's essential for all the structures in our body: our muscles, our hair, skin, nails, bones, hormones, etc. What protein doesn't do is it doesn't provide you energy. So for example, if you're fueling your brain, if you're fueling your muscles, that doesn't come from protein, that comes from carbohydrates. And on its own, protein doesn't make you bigger. So if you're going to the gym to do some strength work, you need to make sure you're fueled with carbohydrates, and you do need protein, but you need to have it at the right time, which is after you've done your training. The thing with protein is that we can't store much protein, so we need to make sure we're eating it regularly through the day, some at breakfast, some at lunch, some in the evening. So for example, if you've got a training session after you finish college, you could go home and have your meal afterwards, and that would be your protein. Protein comes in lots of different forms. So here we've got some examples: meat, fish, eggs. But did you also know you can get protein from things like cheese, yogurt, milk, and beans? Any type of bean, or lentils, or seeds, or nuts. So there's lots of different sources of protein, and the secret is to have a good variety of different sources. So let's have a look at fat. Fat can also provide energy for us, but if we think about doing any activity, it's only very low intensity activity that fat can fuel. The minute we start doing anything that's moderate or high intensity, we need to have those carbohydrates. But fat is also essential for protecting our vital organs, for keeping us warm, and for ensuring we get all the fat-soluble vitamins that we need. But just to reiterate, the minute you start doing any moderate or high intensity activity, you need the carbohydrates. The thing with fat is that we can store infinite amounts. So what we want to look at is making sure we're having more of the healthier fats that can help us and less of the unhealthy fats. So what are they? Well, healthy fats are things like oily fish. So we've got salmon, mackerel, etc. But it could also be things like avocado, olives, olive oil, nuts, seeds, or soybeans. You may know them as edamame beans, or tofu as well. They're also great sources of the healthy fats. So we want more of those. And we want less of the fat that we find in deep fried food or lots of processed foods. Well, healthy fats are things like oily fish. So we've got salmon, mackerel, etc. But it could also be things like avocado, olives, olive oil, nuts, seeds, or soybeans. You may know them as edamame beans, or tofu as well. They're also great sources of the healthy fats. So we want more of those. And we want less of the fat that we find in deep fried food or lots of processed foods. So let's just look at some tips to cover the macronutrients. We need to be thinking about having some carbohydrate, some protein, and some fruit and veg at every meal. Let's try and get that from real food because that's the best way. Let's also add in a water bottle because we need to stay hydrated to make everything work well. And I know you're busy at college, but just a little bit of preparation can make a massive difference to help you fuel well. So here's some ideas. How about at breakfast time you have porridge and milk with some fruit on top? Great to have your carbs and your protein together. At break time, some fruit, easy to carry, easy to grab if you haven't got much time. At lunchtime, how about something like a bagel with some cream cheese or some hummus or some peanut butter? Add in some fruit or veg and you're doing a great job. In the afternoon, especially if you've got a training session, you might want to think about a carbohydrate top-up. So that could be a cereal bar, it could be some fruit, as we talked about earlier. A great dinner option, whether you're training or not, is stir fry because you can buy those bags of pre-chopped veggies if you haven't got time to do it yourself. And then throw in some carbohydrates, that's rice or noodles, and some protein. Now the protein could be something like chicken, but equally it could be beans or tofu, lots of different examples. I've added in a glass of milk or maybe some yogurt if you've got time before bed, especially if you get a little bit hungry later on in the evening. That's a great thing to have in the evening. And don't forget to drink your water, as we've already discussed. I'm just going to finish off with some common mistakes that I see. Often people miss breakfast. Now remember what we said about protein, it's important to have it regularly through the day. So making sure you have some protein is really important at breakfast time, and that could be in the form of milk or yogurt, preferably. Sometimes people eat a lot of protein and think they might need to have things like protein powders, protein shakes, but if you eat good food regularly through the day, then my guess is you're probably having enough protein, and you can definitely get all the protein you need from real food. If you're doing a lot of training, you might need to have some more carbohydrates because that's our energy source. The other mistake I see quite often is that people eat an awful lot of food in the evening and are maybe sort of hungry through the day. And actually, if you think about it, you want to fuel everything you do in the day. So you want to make sure you're fueled to go to college. You want to make sure you're fueled to do any activities you're doing, being that training or just spending time with your friends. So maybe think about what you're having for breakfast and lunch as well as for your evening meal. You can always add in more fruit and veg because they make sure to keep us healthy. But I just want to leave you with one point, which is that eating well doesn't have to be expensive. We're going to look at this in some other of these little presentations. But hopefully some of the things I've shown on the previous slide are things you might have in the store cupboard at home anyway and are easy and definitely not expensive. Thanks everyone.